I'm Jeff with Precision Replacement Parts. I'm here with Greg today. We're going to show you how to install a WFK 141178. Greg, what's this fit?
This is a 4-piece Beltline kit, inners and outers. They can also be purchased separately. These parts fit a 1978 to 87 Chevy El Camino.
Check our website for complete make, model, year information. Let's get started.
We're going to start our removal process by removing this upper portion of the door panel. We're going to start by removing the retainers for this pull strap. Now this one is missing, so we're going to start on this front one, and there are 2 tabs retaining that into the holder. We'll go ahead and remove these screws. Now we're going to remove the lock knob by spinning it off. Now there's locating pins on the back side of this panel. There's one in the front, and there's one in the back that we need to remove. And then pull up on the panel, pull it out of the way. Now what we find is the power window switch has this blue retainer that screws off. This just holds the connection in place. We'll pull this connector off the switch. We need to gain access for this retaining screw behind the glass. Now that we have the upper panel removed, we're going to remove the armrest of the lower section. Go ahead and remove the 2 screws holding the armrest pad on. Once those are out, what we want to do is slide this forward, and you'll find 2 retaining tabs underneath this armrest. They go into corresponding slots in this lower panel area. Again, you slide it forward towards the front of the vehicle. You'll find 2 retaining screws behind the arm pad, and we'll remove those now. Just like the upper panel had, the lower panel has retaining clips into the door shell itself. We'll go ahead and remove those with the pry tool. And we'll slide this forward off of the handle. There's an electrical connector for the power locks in this panel. We'll leave that in place. Remove these retaining clips holding this insulation in place. Again, we'll just slide this over this lower panel. Remove the dust paper. Just some butyl stripping here. Now we're gaining access to this lower limiting bolt. We're going to remove this. Now it actually loosened up enough, and we have the original location of it, so we're just going to leave it in place to see if it gives us enough access to the Phillips screw. Now we can reach that screw with the Phillips screwdriver and remove it. We go ahead and remove the rest of the Phillips screws retaining this outer belt line to the door shell. Okay, now with that outer belt line out of the way, we'll go ahead and clean off the door shell, any debris, and get ready for reinstallation of the outer belt line. We've got the new belt line lined up on top of the door here, just making sure that the screw holes in the door shell align with the ones in the new belt line. I'm going to pull the door glass towards the inner shell of the door to drop the new belt line in behind it. Now we're going to line up the screw holes. Now we'll get our retaining screws. We'll start this one here. You have to be careful not to drop it down inside the door shell. I'm not going to tighten them as I go, I'm just going to put them in so I can get them all lined up and then come back and tighten them. Okay. Now that I've got them started, I'm going to go back and tighten them all down. Before we get away from this outer belt line, what I'd like to do is raise the glass up a little bit so I can tighten up, put back in this original position, this lower limiting stop. I'm going to use the old mark that I have here from the washer. And I'm just going to tighten this back in place where it originally was. Just to reiterate, what this bolt does, it tightens a bracket that only allows the door glass to go down so far. So now we will start the removal of the inner belt line, which is attached to the upper portion of the door panel. Now the old one is retained by staples, which we will have to remove, and we'll start that process now. Now the inside of this door panel has a metal insert. So these staples, I can get kind of aggressive to open them up for removal. I'm going to open this up a little bit, and then I will come in with the needle nose and straighten them the rest of the way so they can be removed. Now I'm going to lean the door panel back down, and I'm going to take the screwdriver and pry in between the door panel and the belt line, raising it up, and then push back down on the belt line to expose this staple to be removed the rest of the way. We'll do this process along the length of the belt line. Okay, now we've gotten down to our last one. We'll go ahead and remove this staple. Now that we've got the old belt line off, now we'll get this area of the door panel cleaned up and ready for reinstall of the new belt line. Now we're going to start the reinstall process of the new belt line on the door panel. Now there are holes pre-drilled along the length of the belt line. A lot of people do not have access to the industrial staplers that originally were used, so we are going to rivet ours on. So now with reinstallation, as far as orientation front to back, we're going to use our old wear lines. Now this front lines up, I'm just going to verify the back lines up also. So this is the placement of the belt line onto the door panel. And now that we have our belt line where it needs to be, orientation front to back, what I'm going to do, I need to hold this in place. I'm going to use this vice grip. Because it has that reinforcement on the back side, I'm just clamp this together and we'll drill this hole. I want to call out that while you're riveting this new belt line onto the door panels, that we pay attention so we don't have a gap in between this chrome edge and the door panel. We want this to sit flush and tight. To do that, what we're doing is pushing the belt line down against the door panel before we're putting the vice grips on to make sure that we don't have a gap. want to go ahead and remove any debris, the drill shavings from the belt line. We want to make sure that we don't have any embedded into the flocking material and then scratch the door glass. So we're just going to get this cleaned up. We're going to go one step further and we're going to put some paint on these rivet heads so they're not so visual for aesthetic reasons. Now that we have the belt line installed on the door panel, we can go ahead and reinstall it on the door. Now we're going to start the reinstall process of the door panels. We want to double check and make sure that we've tightened down this limiter for the door glass itself. Now we'll go ahead and reinstall our dust paper. Most of the times what happens with that strict caulking that holds this in place doesn't want to hold very well, so we're just going to use a couple pieces of tape to hold it in place also. We're going to reinstall this insulation by using our retaining clips into the holes in the door shell. There's placement right through the dust paper for these. We have to be mindful of the electrical connections that come through the paper and the insulation. Make sure they're available for reinstall onto the panels. We're going to start with this lower panel. With this lower panel, we left the electrical connector together, but this panel does get retained into the door shell with these plastic clips. The dust boot is still on the handle, so what we're going to do is start by bringing the handle through the panel. I'm going to line up these clips with the corresponding holes in the door shell. I'm just going to push them into place. I'm also reaching behind the panel to make sure that they're getting into the holes and not folding over. We're going to go ahead and complete the installation of this lower portion of the door panel by installing these retaining screws. Next we want to bring in that arm pad and we're going to slide it backwards so those tabs insert into the panel. We want to make sure that it's locked in. And now install these two Phillips screws that hold the pad in place. Now we'll move on to the upper door panel. And we're going to start with the upper door panel by reconnecting the power window switch. The length of the wires really limit how much we can pull the panel away from the door shell, but we'll get this installed. Now the retainer just pushes into place. You have to spin it off to remove it, but reinstall just pushes into place. We're going to go ahead and bring the upper panel into place. We're going to get our lock knob through the panel. And we're going to put that attaching piece on there right away so we don't lose that. Now reinstalling this, a couple things come into play. We have to work the lower portion of the panel into the lower door panel. But at the same time, we're getting it over the top of the door shell. And once you have the upper panel in place, there are these two locating pins on the back side of that panel that go into holes in the door shell. We'll push them into place. Again, this upper panel has to be wrapped around the upper portion of the door shell. We're going to go ahead and put the pull strap screws into place. Use this punch just to center the hole. Sometimes the insulation and dust paper get in the way. Go ahead and get these installed. Again, we only had one of these little caps and the tab is broke on this one, so we'll see if it's going to stay in there. And that wraps up the installation of the WFK 141178. Thanks for watching.